Good evening, listeners and viewers of TDN Radio, and in particular, the audience of This Week in Interview. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Interview. To my regular listeners, I want to tell you a very special good night. And if tonight is the first time that you listen to This Week in Interview, welcome. Gather around, grab your favorite beverage, and we are going to launch off and just really spend an hour exploring ideas, because that's what we do on This Week in Interview. Bring you contemporary topics, but from a different angle than what you would normally see. And we explore and we get you to think. And in thinking, we get you to commit to taking action. So, as I said, grab your favorite beverage, call, text, send an email to 5 people, let them know that This Week in Interview is about to get on the way. We have a very interesting topic. I have decided that we are going to continue talking about Passportgate as in Watergate. That has to do with the missing information, the missing funds, the missing resources from Dominica's, they call it the CBI, but the sale of Dominican passports to foreigners, that program that the government has. And we are staying on that. We're calling it Passportgate because there's so much lack of accountability. And we saw some reports that were run recently in the Guardian newspaper by the OCCRP, Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. And they, think they started doing some work, and then they realized how far down Dominica was in that program. There was enough information for them to do multiple reports on Dominica. And my guest tonight to talk about it is Mr. Alvin Thomas, my best friend, my brother Alvin. We're going to explore and dive deep. When Alvin is there with me, we usually get some nuggets and really flesh out and bounce our concepts and our ideas of each other. So hang in there, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. As soon as I come back, Alvin is going to join me, and we are going to be talking about Passportgate, where are Dominica's billions of dollars that are unaccounted for. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. I hope you got a chance to get your water or whatever your favorite beverage is, and you are ready to take this journey with us. It's going to be about an hour. We are continuing our Passportgate saga. Hopefully, we have the same result that Watergate had, where government, the president, in our case, the prime minister, is going to be held to account. Prime minister who thinks that he's, by virtue of him being the prime minister of the country, he should not be accountable to anyone. We hope that by pursuing this and by bringing you information very, as objective as we can be, that you will agree that there is some action that needs to be taken, there is some accountability, there is some explaining that needs to be done by the government of Dominica. And so, joining me tonight to have that discussion with me is Mr. Alvin Thomas. Before I bring Alvin on, though, I want to say a very special welcome to you who are listening in Dominica. You may be listening to us on RVR Jams Radio, which is aired live, which airs This Week in Interview live on DigiPlay Channel 59, and Radio Online SBE Radio Online in the Toronto market also brings This Week in Interview live as well. You can also find us on YouTube, on Instagram, on our Facebook page. This Week in Interview has its own Facebook page, as well as TDN Radio Facebook page. You can find us there. And those who do not do Facebook, we have tdntv.net, tdntv.net, where you can see This Week in Interview. And when you go to the whatever media you go on, give us a like, subscribe so you can know when we are on, and also share. Make a comment as well so we know that you are there listening. So welcome, guys. Gather around, and let's bring up my guest, Mr. Alvin Thomas. He's no stranger to This Week in Interview. Very strong advocate. He is a former uh, assistant secretary in the Ministry of Tourism. Another reason I brought him on, because Dominica is just coming out of the World Creole Music Festival. I think this year was probably maybe the 16th one, I think, maybe. Alvin will correct us, will bring us up to date with that. You know, 16th, no, because they started a long time ago, so it's probably more than 16. Alvin, your mic is muted, I don't know. So that's one of the other reasons I brought him. But also, Alvin is one of those clear-thinking people who can take a complex subject and break it down so that we can understand it. And so tonight he is here. We are going to talk about the CBI program, the lack of accountability on the CBI program. And as a result of the lack of accountability, the absence of evidence in the Dominican economy of the effective use of the revenue that's generated by the CBI program. Where is the money? What was it spent on? And it's our money. How can we benefit from that funds? And have you seen evidence of benefiting from that fund? And as you know, the report from the OCCRP, not just that, the European Union also released a statement about 2 or 3 weeks ago that said that in the last 5 or 6 years, Dominica sold 34,500 passports. 34,500 passports. The average cost of one of those passports is $100,000. So do the math. The OCCRP, last week I played the interview with you with one of the lead reporters from there, Mr. Tony Hariri, and he was saying that from their discovery when they were doing their report, some 20,000 passports seem to be unaccounted for based on the numbers that the government of Dominica is reporting. So 20,000 times 100,000 is $2 billion US, $5 billion EC. And so we want to know what happened. And of course, if the numbers are wrong, the simple thing to do is to give us the real numbers. Open the books, show that they're audited, give us the books. It's a public information, it's public money. Show us, no, guys, the passport, we sold them at $10,000, and this is the revenue, and this is what we did with the revenue. Just dispel all of what we say, if what we say is not true. Just open the books and let us know what's going on with our money. But until you can do that, we are going to go with what we found, that some 20,000 passports are unaccounted for at an average price of $100,000 each. That is $2 billion US dollars, over 5 billion EC dollars. And by all accounts, then that is probably an undercount, because the data and the record keeping is so difficult to come by that it wouldn't be surprised anyone if the numbers are much higher than that. But we're going to work with what we have. And so that lack of accountability, do you see, Dom, when you were in Dominica for Creole Music Festival, did you drive on very nice roads with proper barricades? When it rained, did you feel safe driving under the cliff because work was done to prevent rocks from falling onto your cars and so on? Did you see Dominican people smiling and seem like a country that's enjoying a windfall, that's enjoying prosperity. What was your impression of Dominica and life in Dominica, knowing that the country generated over 5 billion EC dollars in the last few years? All right, so let me not take too much of our time. I have my guests here with me. I'm always excited to talk to my brother Alvin. Alvin, welcome back to This Week in Interview. It's been a long time. It's been too long since you've been on This Week in Interview, but it's always a pleasure to have you. Welcome.
Yes, yes, certainly, certainly. Well, thank you, Tony. Thank you for inviting me again to sit with you on This Week in Interview. It's always a pleasure to join you and to have a conversation with many listeners, folks who are logged in and tuned in tonight into the program every week. I always describe that engagement that we're having as a conversation. We're not here to lecture anyone. It's not a lecture series we're doing. We're having a conversation, and in the process of that conversation, we are seeking to bring clarity to some of the issues that may be a bit vague or not quite clear, and that is critical and required in any democracy. That is what democracy is all about. So certainly it's a pleasure to be back. I'm looking forward to us having a very stimulating conversation this evening. And as you rightly pointed out, we've been into this CBI program for quite some time, and we don't really see the correlation in terms of the monies or the revenues received vis-a-vis the developments on the island and the programs that have been undertaken. So during the course of our conversation, I'll make some parallels because I always like to compare. That's one of the ways I think our listeners can maybe have a better appreciation. It's always good to put things in context. Within what context are we looking at this? So I'll make some comparisons parallel, and in particular, I'll look at St. Kitts, who also have a similar program in terms of what are some of the things that they have done with the program vis-a-vis what we have done in terms of even during the COVID, where you found that Dominica was the only island where the citizens didn't benefit in anything whatsoever, hardly anything. So I'm hoping to share some of that along with some other information as it relates more specific to Dominica. So thanks again for having me, and I'm looking forward to us really having a great conversation.
Yeah, certainly. As you said, This Week in Interview, although it is called This Week in Interview, it's not an interrogation and it's not a lecture. It's a conversation. So this is how I want to start off the conversation, Alvin. Most of us have Dominica in our heart. We cherish Dominica where we were born. We cherish the life that we were able to enjoy as young kids, as young adults, as most of us started our families in Dominica. Some of us migrated and some of us are still in Dominica. But every so often in a conversation, you used to hear people say, "Man, if I win the lottery, I'm going back to Dominica and I'm going to do X, Y, Z." You know what I mean? If I win, so sometimes the jackpot in America goes to 1.2 billion. And I say, "Alvin, if you win that jackpot, what are you going to do?" By going to Dominica and I setting up a program for young people. I buying a boat for farmers to be able to bring their produce to the neighboring islands. I set up a water bottling plant. I set up an whatever it is. So let's just spend a couple of minutes talking about that. Let us pretend, okay, that we did win the lottery and we have, I don't know, what do you want to say, $100 million available that we can go to Dominica with, $100 million free and clear that we can go to Dominica with and spend as we wish. But we decide that because of what Dominica gave to us, we want to spend it for the benefit of Dominica. I mean, what are some of those ideas or projects you had in mind? If you won $100 million, you take care of all your family and all of yourself and everything, and you have $100 million to go and spend in Dominica, what would you do for $100 million?
Well, that's a really good and interesting question, Tony. Wish me luck then.
You see what I mean? I'm saying it
Wish me some
hypothetically,
luck.
but there's so many Dominicans
Yes.
who have that. If I
No,
win that $1 billion, I'm going to go to Dominica and
yeah,
do something.
I think that is a very good way to look at it or to put it. And let me kind of preface this response to your question in the sense that um, I recently came across a document that was prepared by the UNDP, United Nations Development Program. They're based in Barbados. And they're an organization that does development, well, not development work, but they do consultancy work in terms of looking at government's programs throughout the region, the country, what can you do and what not can you do. And last year they did two reports, two separate reports was undertaken. One specific to the private sector, and the one to the private sector was titled Diagnostic Report of Dominica's Private Sector. And they did another one for the tourism sector. And they referred to this one as a sort of rebuilding, a rebuild of the tourism sector coming out of COVID-19. And in the one that looks specifically towards the private sector, they recognize the fact that the private sector is the engine of growth. And when we speak of private sector, Tony, we're not speaking here of any Fortune 500 companies like we have here in the States. We're speaking of pretty much what they term as micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. They refer to them as MSMS, MSMSE, meaning they're micro, they're small, and they're medium-sized. And one of the revelations that came out of it was that, well, first of all, they recognize that this enterprise, the small and medium-sized enterprises, experience tremendous challenges in a number of areas. But the main area that they identified was the lack of access to finance. And they 67, when they did a survey and surveyed out, you had 67% responded that lack of finance was something that kept them back. They also identify high electricity rate. That came out at 62%. And they also mentioned low sales and profit for reinvestment. That came out at 60%. So between those three categories, lack of finance was the top. And that is in kind of response to what you're saying. Because one of the things that the report recognized, and it applies here again in the US, that the small businesses, even here in the United States, are the engine of growth. That's what they're going to stimulate development, stimulate growth, stimulate employment in any country. So there are a number of small businesses in Dominica, in the hotel sector. I wouldn't even say manufacturing, but I guess we can put it on the list as well. Agriculture sector. There's so many areas that monies can be put into for productive purposes. You see what I'm saying? There is the very same report that I'm referencing indicated as well that in 2021, 2021, and this report, as I said, was concluded. The one on the private sector was concluded in August of last year, and the other one was somewhere around June, the tourism one. Manufacturing as a percentage of GDP, manufacturing for the country as a percentage of GDP. And they were looking at 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. In 2017, manufacturing was 2.7% as a percentage of GDP, 2.7%. In 2018, it was 2.67%. In 2019, it was 2.23%. In 2020, it was 2.71%. And in 2021, it was 2.11%. Okay? Agriculture in 2021 was just 13.31%. And the last one I will mention is hotels and restaurants. Hotels and restaurants. And you may, when we get a little further into our conversation, as it relates to the CBI where the money is going, you hear all the time the government saying, well, they're building 5 stars hotel and 16 stars hotel and all that kind of, thing, and housing. Hotels and restaurants. In 2017, it represented 1.66% of GDP. 1.66%. In 2018, it represented 1.32% of GDP. In 1.43% of GDP. In 2020, it represented 0.63% of GDP. Granted, they will say, well, it was COVID and people were not traveling, blah, 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 hotel occupancy low, accept. And in 2021, it was 0.51% of GDP. So what these numbers are telling you is that if you take the country as a whole, and like everybody else, and most of our folks are listening, what GDP stands for. It's your gross domestic product. It is taking all your activities in the country, what you export, what you sell, what you buy, your services, everything. And it says, let me see how you're doing in the various sectors. Which sector is contributing to your domestic product, to your growth? And these are the numbers as reflected for the hotel and restaurants and the manufacturing that I just gave you. So clearly, going back to your question, that kind of money that you talk about can do a lot of things that are needed now in the country. Fisheries, tourism, you name it. Any one of those areas would gladly require that money. And let me just say, in closing on that comment, last comment on that, we're talking about in terms of investment, Tony. In terms of investment, let's see if I can put it in a little more perspective for you. I would like playing with my numbers. A micro business, okay, micro. The annual turnover, it was estimated, would be anywhere about 100,000 to under 100,000 US. And in terms of investment, we'll be looking about 50,000 to under 50,000 US. And we'll be looking in terms of full-time employees, a company who has, let's say, between 1 and 5 employees. Okay? Between 1 and 5 employees with an annual turnover of just under 100,000 US, with an investment of just equal or under 50,000 US. If you were to give 50 of those companies, identify 50 micro companies, 50 little companies in Dominica that just have no more than 5 employees. They do little jam, pepper sauce, whatever, banana chips, and you give each of them that 50,000 US out of that money you talk about with the lottery, 50,000 US. That's 2.5 million US, just 2.5. Now, that 50 companies that, let's say, they at the maximum, so they have 5 employees, multiply 50 by 5. How many employees they have employed in the country? Okay,
2,500.
so
right.
And then now you will see the ripple effect, because now you have those number of employees gainfully employed full-time, getting money. They can go and buy and shop and go buy Richard, buy Astafans. And you have 50 micro companies that now have injected into their system that investment that is required, just 50,000 US, a little more. And we're looking at $2.5 million. Now
Right.
the same can
Okay,
be
so
applied to
Alvin,
small and medium.
no,
So you
no.
see the picture.
I see what you're saying, but I wanted to get an excitement in terms of I have $100 million I go in Dominica. Okay. So we get it. Out of that $100 million, $3 million you give to support small business. help them expand so they can do
That's at the minimum, though. You can give them more.
employment. I
I'm just
know,
going to minimum.
but you're saying that if you give them $50 million, that's equivalent to their annual turnover or equivalent to their investment, initial investment.
Investment. That's right.
Right.
50,000
So
US.
it means that if 50,000 what it takes to start and you give them 50,000, they could probably double their business.
Absolutely.
And therefore instead of hiring 5 people, they would be hiring maybe 10, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Well, they
right
would move into the next category. They would grow, and now they would move from micro to small.
to small, and so you would see that ripple effect in the economy, and that's just $3 million. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you
Out
turn
of the
around.
100.
Now, if it's me, that's good too. I would also be interested in, say, either chartering a boat or buying a boat so that farmers' produce can get to neighboring markets. Again, it comes back to agriculture. So you see that but if you go to buy a boat now downstream, you have to go and help farmers so that you have the production and in an organized way where you now know that you have production coming, that so your boat is not sailing empty or half capacity or whatever it is. You have everybody lamenting that Dominica has water and we're not able to sell not one bucket of water to anybody, but we have millions of gallons going into the sea. So the sense is that I want people to understand and put this thing in perspective, because it almost feels like it's monopoly money, like it's like it's joke money. When you say that Dominica sold 34,500 passports, Alvin. 35,500 passports at about $100,000 each. So you into the billions. The question that I have is, did we see any of that kind of investment that you and I sitting down dreaming about, hoping to win the lottery, that we could make a difference in Dominica? Did we see the government of Dominica do anything like that?
No, we have not, Tony. It is clear. And I mean, like you said, even the guys who did the report, we had Tony, one guy, one of the investigative reporter, and then we had Zach.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony, both Zach and Tony visited Dominica. And Tony said point blank, as someone coming into the country unbiased, so he's not there, and look around, he could see just looking around in terms of the revenue that was generated from this program and what he saw on Island, there is a disparity. I mean, it's clear like daylight. So clearly there is a complete lack of accountability for the monies. It borders on corruption, the rule of law, and all the other things that one might want to attach to it. It's nothing more than that. And like you said earlier in your opening comments, remarks, up to today, up until this point, the government hasn't disputed any of, if we may want to call it for now, allegations. They've not said, well, hey, this 34,000 passport is inaccurate. And by the way, the reporters referenced that 44,000 from the EU, you know.
Yes.
So they didn't just say the EU, say they quoted, they referenced the EU. Now the EU is not going to put its name on something that it is not sure about. And while we're on that, let our listeners understand that this wasn't something that just happened overnight, you know, or like, 2 weeks or last week ago. In terms of the report itself, the investigative guy's been working on that for the last 12, 15 months, well over a year. And the EU themselves been telling these guys, this thing is not looking good. It's smelling ugly. Clean up the house, do something about it. And when they failed to do something about it, and in particular, Dominica, I must say, that's when the EU clamped down and gave them like 6 different conditions, 6, that they should meet. The EU had to come in and say, hey, you can't sell the passport that low. You need to up the price. 2, the monies must go into Dominica. It can't go anywhere else. 3, you have to do due diligence. 4, you can't use promotional material and say, well, if you get a passport, you'll be able to travel to 144 European countries or Shanghai countries or whatever. So, I mean, so it is not something that just suddenly showed up. You see what I'm saying, Tony? And it is absolutely clear that you have not seen the kind of development. And like I said a while ago, it's always good to make comparisons because we're all in this thing together. We are part of an OECS and we're part of a wider region, which is CARICOM. And it's like a family, okay? It's a family. One brother, sister, whatever, is not doing as well as the other, and one has to help the other. And at the same time, if you are doing stuff that brings the family into disrepute, it affects everybody else. But in terms of the economic impact, you know what is St. Kitts GDP per capita? St. Kitts, as we speak now, what is
Uh-huh.
their GDP per capita? 16,000 US dollars a
Per
year GDP per capita.
per capita.
That means this is what each citizen is worth. Now, if you're saying, well, okay, not worth in the sense of an individual worth, but it's saying that's your capacity, your earning. GDP per capita, 16,000. Dominica is 8,200. Dominica is even below St. Vincent. You have St. Kitts, followed by Antigua. Then you have Grenada, St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent, Dominica.
But if they would count the money that Dominica is earning from the passports, Dominica would be first in line.
Well, yeah, because what would happen, Tony? What would happen? Like St. Kitts, the money would go into development. It would go
Right.
into agriculture. It would go into
Tourism.
fisheries, tourism.
Hmm.
Whatever
Hmm.
sector that is, and that in itself would generate growth in the economy. So the economy would grow. It would grow. It would be stimulated. You would stimulate the economy. You would have the small enterprises that I just mentioned functioning, employing people. People now would have, monies at their disposal. Hotels. I saw something just this week there, um, which was so pathetic. Gary Hotel up for sale.
Yes.
That's
So
an
if I
indigenous hotel.
so if I
I
had
saw
that
that
hundred if
in
I had that
um
hundred
in
million
social
dollars,
media.
that's one of the things I would buy.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, ask me why an indigenous hotel like Garowe?
Gary.
This is not a foreigner. This is not a Chinese. This is not somebody, a foreign person. Why should a hotel like that? Why should the proprietors or the owners of the hotel be in that predicament when we have 1 point something billion or $2 billion of passport money meant for the
That is
development of the country,
unaccounted for.
unaccounted for?
Yeah, that's over and above the pittance that they
So if
declared, you
Garowe
know.
needs, for example, 10 million or 5 million, whatever that is, to reactivate, to recirculate, get them going, get them to, you have a plan for them and say, look, I'm getting you a 50-year plan. Let's do that. Let's work together. Why? Because tourism, you're saying, is one of your key sectors. Agriculture is dead, tourism is thing. So why you don't want to encourage one of your indigenous people to have their hotel in operation? Why? So you're going to sell it, and guess what? Some damn Chinese may be going to buy it and do whatever they want with it. And now it's in the hands of foreign control.
Yeah, certainly. Alvin, we're pushing up on the break. Let me take a quick break. When we come
Sure.
back from the break, we're going to talk about youth. We'll
All
spend
right.
some time on tourism and talk about investment in tourism and the lack thereof. And we also talk about youth and how atrocious it is that our young people are just suffering from
Yeah.
lack of opportunity, lack of inspiration, lack of
Mm-hmm.
hope,
Mm-hmm.
while we have all of this revenue that's just not making it to the shores, money
Yeah.
that should belong to these young people, not you and me, we made our time, but the young people in Dominica who are not seeing much of a hope, much of a future.
Mm-hmm.
What can be done, the possibilities that can be done when we hold this government accountable and we force them to repatriate the money that belongs to Dominica so that it can be spent in Dominica. So let's take a quick word from our sponsors and we'll be right back this week in interview, we are continuing our series on Passportgate, which is what our quest to get answers about the sale of Dominica passport. Now that we have so much data and information that we did not up till now have the resources to get, we were lucky that organizations, international organizations who have deeper pockets and who have the experience and the staff went and dug and got all of that information. And so let us hold this government to account and say, listen, we need to know. If you're saying that what we're saying is not true, what is being said is not true, then show us that it is true. Like any other institution, I used to be at the credit union on the supervisory committee. Every year there's a report, annual report. We have shareholders meeting, and you have to stand in front of your shareholders and give account for every last cent of how it was spent, what was received, what is surplus, what the profit. Every organization, every government has to give that account. Why should Dominica be different? We are demanding that information be given to the public, and then we can say, yes, this is the revenue. You could do better, but this is the revenue, and we see where you spent it. Or we can say, bring the money back. Let us use it because it is needed. Our young people are dying for lack of it. Our elders are dying for lack of proper health care. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Presented by
People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
How much Dominican history do you know? Want to learn some fun facts? We have a great and fun way to test your knowledge and learn more about our history. Get your copy of Dominic Anu, Dominica in Puzzle. Fun for the whole family. Available now on Amazon.com. Visit pushpast10.com to learn more. Email us at dominicainpuzzle@gmail.com or call 877-698-9894. Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, we do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com, or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
Dominica. Hey, Ministry of Tourism, the platform is very, very slippery. I don't know if you're waiting for somebody to slide and break their foot or break their leg. The platform is so slippery. And see that. Opening up to season, we don't cater for them. We haven't cater for the workers then. Safety, professionalism. Safety and professionalism. Then it's just. Yes, listen.
Always saying all you working AM to PM.
No.
And I just state all about tourism industry.
AM to
all killing it.
All killing
All killing the industry. And we put all on blast.
Yeah.
Day of tourists. Look at that. Dominica ready for tourists yet. Watch that. All running all your mouth on social media. But look at that. We ready for tourists yet. All ready for tourists yet. Huh? Look it. All running all your mouth. All your people to fix things after all, man. What embarrassment this morning there, boy.
All right, so welcome back. Thanks for staying with us for the break, and thank you for our sponsors. You know, they keep us live. And those last two videos you saw are videos from a week ago, the opening of tourism season, cruise season in Dominica, and we see tourists walking in clearly unsafe conditions, just decrepit and disrepair. And I played it because we are talking about Passportgate. Passportgate, the unaccountability of the government of what is happening with the revenue from the sale of Dominican passports. We don't see it reflected in the country, and that's what we're talking about. For a country that has a windfall of a couple $2 billion, and this is what this is what we're bringing people in to see. So when a cruise ship charges American or European or whoever it is, a couple $1,000s to go on a cruise, and the cruise ship comes and they stop in St. Martin and they stop in Antigua and they stop in St. Kitts, and then they come to Dominica and they see this beautiful island, green and mountainous and whatever, and then they come on the ground and they see that type of thing. They might say, oh, these people are poor, so let's give them a couple dollars. They totally live with a different idea that maybe Dominica is a place to do missionary work, but not a place to go if you want to go and enjoy a vacation, because there's a risk. There's a risk you might fall, you might break it. These people, they don't know what they're about. They're just starting these stories and things. So, okay, we'll wait till we get to St. Martin to enjoy ourselves, and Dominica will just be there as a token. Whatever, it doesn't reflect us as a people. It doesn't reflect us as a people. It doesn't reflect any kind of investment in tourism. It doesn't reflect a country that has money to send its people to train. It doesn't reflect a country that has skilled carpenters that can go in there and do a proper bridge, proper railings. It doesn't reflect anybody who's been anywhere around anything that has to do with public safety or anything like that. And that's tourism. That's one of the areas that the government says that it is its focus. We just saw the completion of the World Creole Music Festival, and during one of the biggest nights, Saturday night, the tent for the VIP, where people pay extra money so they can be in comfort, the tent collapsed because it was raining. And again, we saw, it wasn't no big tropical storm, there was rain, but we saw the washing away of bridges, we saw the washing away of roads. We just see that things are just falling apart. Things are just falling apart in Dominica. And that is happening in a situation where, from all reports, Dominica earned revenue in the billions of dollars from the sale of passports. Where is the money? Passportgate has to be kept alive, and accountability has to be demanded until we get answers. What about our youth? Windsor Park, the main grounds in the middle of the city, the capital city, Roseau, was turned into a stadium. So our young people don't have access to Windsor Park to go play like a football or cricket, basketball and so on. They turn into a stadium, so the West Indies plays there. But where does the young people of Roseau go? when they want to do a little pick-up football and hang out and so on. Alvin, I'm going to come back to you. And I'm putting all of that on the table because I just want you to talk about what you see. I know you were the Assistant Secretary in Ministry of Tourism when the World Queer Music Festival was started at the inception. And as Minister of Tourism, you know, talk to us about that video that we saw with people walking on a bridge, and you know you have to hold your breath that somebody does stop their toe and fall over the side, or their foot go down in a crack and they break their ankle, or something like that. Talk about our young people where we see an increase in crime and opportunities for them in the context of a time when we're earning billions of dollars.
Yeah, it is indeed very pathetic, Tony. It's very pathetic. And like you say, again, when you started off the program, those of us Dominicans who are out of Dominica, I would say we are out of Dominica, but our heart is in Dominica. We're in New York or Atlanta or California, wherever it is. And you know the kind of pride and feelings and all of that goes with wanting to visit, want to go home. And it reflects itself. When Dominicans go home, granted, as we say, the development doesn't show itself in the manner it should based on these unaccounted monies. But Dominicans are always happy. And we are raising these things, not because we just love to raise them, you know. I would have liked to have a different conversation tonight, you and I, and say, boy, let us boast, let us put our hands up and say, boy, look, that came out good, you know, and you're going on your job tomorrow morning and you boast into all the folks in your office. Man, let's go down to Dominica next year, boy. This thing was so great. You want to go? That is what we should have, but we can't do that. And let me just say on the question of the tourism, I took the opportunity to speak on Mark's show earlier this week about this particular matter. I worked in the Ministry of Tourism as the Assistant Secretary. And I was there from the inception of the ministry. So when the Honorable Norris Prefo took up that portfolio as Minister of Tourism, I was the Assistant Secretary there from the inception, meaning from 1995, with the minister as Assistant Secretary. That is the number 2 position after the minister. You have the Permanent Secretary, and then you have the Assistant Secretary. So I was fully engaged in all aspects of the ministry, in the work of the ministry, advise the minister, assist the minister to carry out his mandate, prepare cabinet papers, the whole works, what it takes to run a ministry as an assistant secretary. And I can say on the records that in terms of Mr. Norris's performance, that was one of the best minister of tourism Dominica has ever had. He was hands-on, he was smart, he was bright, he fought for Dominica. I had the opportunity to attend some meetings with Mr. Prevot overseas, locally and overseas, and he is sharp like a whistle. He'll fight. To the extent, as I told Matt on his program, that in 1997, our product had elevated so well that the Caribbean Tourism Organization had the confidence in us, where we hosted the first ever tourism sustainable development conference in Dominica that brought together quite a large number of delegates to attend that convention. So in terms of the sites, we had a protocol. There's a protocol in place to deal with the sites. It wasn't anything just being dealt in a sort of ad hoc manner. I mean, when it comes to tourism, we had a whole list of areas that we did in the ministry at the time. We made sure all the trails were properly maintained. So what you saw there would have never occurred. Never. We had an engineer or architect on staff in the person of Randy Kaiser Peters with his team, We'd go out there, the minister and I would go, we'd visit the sites, especially during the downtime, make sure everything is on point. We during that time in the ministry, we established what was called a marine park in the Soufriere Basin to promote dive and whaling and diving and whale watching.
Whale watching.
Okay, that was established. There was a bird watching sanctuary in the syndicate. 1,000 acres of land was purchased for that project. You know what I'm telling you? 1,000 acres of land was purchased. A bird watching sanctuary.
You shouldn't tell us people that, now they know we
Okay.
have 1,000 acres of land in
We
Syndicate. They'll go look to sell it.
We established tourist visitor center at Trafalgar, Emerald Pool, Indian River, and Soufriere. We appointed park wardens to provide security and to collect fees, because that was one of the ways you could go about to maintain the site. You collect some little fees from the visitors, and we had visitor center. We approved at the time a proposal from Bernard Wiltshire to get funds for what was called the National Trail, the Carib Village. Okay, Bernard presented a proposal on that, and we're looking to fund that. We started what was called a system of training and certification for tour guides. That was started during that time with Mr. Prevost and the NDC in collaboration with the NDC. Mrs. Vernie Bellani, she was the parliamentary secretary in the Ministry of Tourism. She was responsible, and we developed what was called development of community tourism. And that was where, as I told you, the CTO had so much confidence in us. We had a conference held there. And finally, the World Creole Music Festival. When the World Music Creole Festival, it was a brainchild out of a meeting that Julius Timothy, Norris Prevost, and I think Sheridan as well, they attended original meeting. And during that time, they say, boy, they saw a festival in a particular Caribbean country, their own whatever festival. I won't call the name of the island. And they came back and they said, boy, do you know we can do something even better than that with our Creole? Because at the time, our Kadas, our Zouk, and this and that, and that way we could do it around the time of our independence. And listen to what was the underlying reason for the festival. One, we felt that it would complement Dominica's annual independence celebration. So that is why it was held in the last
weekend of October,
going into the independence.
Right.
And so, secondly, it would boost tourist arrival to Dominica. That was the intention, that people would hear about it, they would come. Third, it would increase revenue for stayover visitor. So unlike the cruise ship that just comes, dock in the morning, leave in the afternoon, you'd have someone coming in maybe from Thursday for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and maybe go back Monday morning or Sunday night. So you have a 4-night stay where they would spend, they would eat, they would do everything. It would promote Creole music as a major musical art form. You know what I'm saying? Promote Creole music as a major musical art form. And finally, develop the country's art, music, and entertainment. And by that, you would bring a lot of this Creole infusion, Zedico music, Zouk music, compa, and that kind of thing. And do you know, Tony, within the Creole speaking world or community, there is something, I believe, of well over 2 or 3 million. You have Creole in Dominica, Grenada has some of it, Guadeloupe, French Guiana, Haiti, Louisiana, Martinique, Mauritius, Reunion, St. Lucia, even in St. Thomas, Seychelles, Trinidad have a little Creole. And the intention was to showcase that music, given what the Exile one, the Gramax, you name it. And they have taken this festival and they have bastardized it. And when I listened to the festival, like I told a friend of mine yesterday, do you think that, say, Jamaica, for example, have their Reggae Splash.
Reggae Sunsplash.
Reggae Song Splash Festival. Reggae Song Splash Festival. Here was a festival, and you would put up an artist there to sing Bouillon at the Reggae Song Splash Festival. No, seriously. Or a dance hall. So and the sad part about it is that we're talking about 26 years since that festival was inaugurated. 26 years. It's been held for 23 out of the 26 because, as you know, you had a few years they had the hurricanes, and those years they did not have it. So the festival is well into a quarter of a century, and it is really sad. As someone, as I said, who was in the ministry at the time, who saw and know of the reasons that I just outlined there, what was the underlying reason for the festival, to see what it has become, it's really a shame.
And it's not because you don't want the music festival to develop and to grow, because everything
Tony, let me stop you there. It is not a music festival, and that's the problem. It is not the World Music Festival. It is the World Creole Music Festival.
Well, that's where I was going.
They're making the mistake.
No. That's where I was going, because like everything else, what distinguishes this festival from any other festival? You see what I mean? I mean,
Yes.
there are some people who will just go. Like some people go to New York for Labor Day, go Miami Carnival, they go Atlanta Carnival, but that's a small sliver.
Right.
But everybody knows that when you do a niche and you develop that niche, you command you can command a special price, you can command special attention because you are in that niche. And what I'm hearing you saying is that when it was conceptualized as a niche product.
Absolutely.
And what
Nowhere
we've done
else you
is
can go
water
and
down that
find
niche.
a Creole festival.
Right.
You will find several music festivals, or
Right.
you may find a jazz festival. So you go to a jazz festival, you get jazz, different genre of jazz music, or a musical festival. But this is specifically a Creole. That's what makes us unique and different. That was the attraction, that people would hear that. And like I said, there's so many countries around the world where we could attract a number of within this Creole speaking community, and even non-Creole, where people would be excited to come and hear, I mean, you know, Tony, a zouk, a compa, a kadas, a bouillon, you know. I mean, even as, and I agree with Wadix, even some element of calypso, because calypso come out of the slave plantation,
The Creole
that
culture.
civilization,
Yeah.
even some of that. But rather than put that in the World Creole Music Festival, you take a dancehall person and put dancehall music and all this kind of stuff. Last year we had how many of the artists insulting the patrons, cursing, using all kind of obscene languages. I mean, it's really, really, really sad. And that is why I'm so passionate about this thing. As I said, it's not for want of just wanting to criticize or to say whatever, but to point out and to conceptualize, contextualize how this thing started, what was the underlying reason for it, and where it is today.
Yeah, and I'm bringing it back to Passportgate, because unlike other times when you say the excuse we are a small island and we don't have the money and we don't have this, my rationale is that the money existed to do anything we wanted to do.
Absolutely. And smallness can be an advantage. Small can be advantage, as you might hear in the Creole say, "Piti hashkabat go bois." So small is an advantage, and we should have by now developed that festival to such a level that we would have even how you call it? We would have a World Creole Music Festival store where you could sell various help me, what do you call it?
Paraphernalia, merchandise, whatever.
Yes, pens, mugs, T-shirts, caps, you name it, as part of the festival. given where we are now. But rather, you have a prime minister comes on the second night of a festival and sings AM and PM and Girls Gone Wild and says something to whatever one bus man something. What is it, Tony? Help me now. I'm trying to. And
I
he
didn't listen to that
salute
nonsense.
his crowd. He salute like he's the general. And so that's what you have at a festival. It's really a disgrace. It's really unfortunate. But Tony, you ask about the young people, and you had asked about the young people as well. And like you, Tony, we are both passionate about young people. Before we migrated to the US, we were actively involved in an organization called the JCs, Dominica JCs.
Yep.
And that's an organization geared specifically for young people. You're in this, you come in there as 18 to 40. By the time you're 40, you would have graduated. You would have learned and acquired so much in terms of, public speaking, project management, event, and you name it, that they felt at that age you can now go out and be a leader in your community. And we are both passionate about young people. And it saddens me to see where young folks are today. And there was a caller on Matt's program the other day that made a very striking comment that I'm sure not many of us have fully understand. Because he says that when you have encouraged a dependency sort of syndrome in young people, that they must beg for everything, that they can't get jobs. Like we say, the micro, small, or medium-sized companies do not exist. That Ross University closed down, that this place closes down, that Chinese come now and open. And young people are not gainfully employed. And they do not have the opportunity to pay into a social security system like we have back home. Because they're not working, so nothing is going in.
Right.
And they carry their life. So you take a young man who may have been 30 or his late 20s or his mid 20s, and this government is there for 20 years. They're now 45. Within the next 15 years, they are 60. And they have no benefits that they can get anywhere. So in their young age, they were dependent on the government for everything, for handouts. And now they have gotten into their twilight age at 60. And they're going to be even more dependent now on the government because they have not worked to contribute it into a scheme, so there's nothing to come out. They have not worked to build a home for their own. They don't have a home. They have had to maybe forcefully, if their parents left a piece of land for them, sell it. The Chinese bought it over. So they don't have a legacy. They don't have, something to stand by. We're going to have in Dominica a very, very, very sad and disgruntled age people. Because they're going to get, those who are 40 to the 20 years from now will be 60.
Yeah.
And those who are 40 will be 70. And the time runs by very quickly. And what would they have to show when they get to that age? I think that is an injustice to our young people. It is not right. While in the meantime, this so-called young prime minister is enriching himself with wealth, with property, and you name it, the whole 9 yards. And I think this is something that has to be addressed. And my call and my cry tonight is that we must all lend our voice to what is going on. It took over 60 international journalists from spread over 10 or 12 countries, published reports in more than 11 languages to point out something wrong with the program that we have. I think it's incumbent on all of us, whatever part of the globe we are as Dominicans, to speak on this issue, to be honest with ourselves. It has nothing to do with any personal thing or trying to be personal with anyone. To speak on the issue. Let's stay on the issue. Our passport is our sovereignty. It's part of our constitution. Citizenship is part of our constitution. You're not selling a piece of land. It's bad enough to sell all our land, and that's another matter we are going to have another discussion on. Because when Leblanc came in as prime minister, as premier, that is, Leblanc ensured that you had an alien land holding license and act in parliament so that no alien, quote unquote, person could come and acquire more land than Dominicans. Look what's happening in Wesley now with this Chinese and acquiring property and land all over the place. So we have to speak to that. And what happens is that evil is allowed to fester when good people sit by, say nothing, do nothing. So they're just as bad as the person who themselves is perpetuating the evil act. So it is my hope that those reports, and I'm glad on TDN what they're doing to call it Passportgate, because that's what it really is. To look into this thing. The EU looked into it, and the EU gave certain guidelines and tell them, hey, they've taken certain conditions. You can't get a visa like that anymore. You can't enter without a visa.
Even Canada, which is supposed to be a friendly country, is requiring a visa now.
Absolutely. So they have taken certain actions on us. So we as Dominica now need to take certain actions ourselves and ask the tough questions. And it's like any corporation or any management or a CEO running a company, and somehow the company is selling, making money, but when the books come to, you're not seeing the money.
Are you not even seeing the books?
You're not seeing the books.
You're not even seeing the books.
Somebody has to say, well, what happened to the money?
Yeah. I mean, last week when we did the first series on Passportgate, we provided a link to St. Lucia, where St. Lucia has annual reports from 2015 all the way to 2022. Each year there's a report on their product. So any St. Lucian can go in there and look at the numbers and see. They can ask questions, they can do whatever, but at least you can see that the government has enough respect for the people.
Yep.
That they understand that they have to be accountable. And so we have some people who are, for whatever reason, very enamored with the current administration, and they're willing to give them a pass for anything. You know, it's sort of like a God relationship. That it was only God, you know. God, your little baby gets into a freak accident and dies, and you don't curse God because you say, you know, God knows in all his wisdom, he knows why he caused that tragedy to happen. It's only God that, you know, say a house catches on fire and an old lady and a grandchildren die in the fire, and you say, well, in all his wisdom, he knows what he's doing. But when you attribute that to a man, that no matter what that man does, you can find a reason to excuse him. You can find a reason not to hold him accountable. What you're really doing is worshiping that person as a God. And if you're a religious person and you say what you are saying, you have to understand that behavior is equivalent to what the Bible says when it says, have no other God before me, because you are placing this person as a God. It doesn't matter what that person does. You find a reason to excuse him. You have no accountability. You ask him for no explanation. He can come and tell you it's not your damn business, and you just take it and walk away. And you take any little thing, you are putting this person in the position of a God.
But also,
go ahead, Alvin.
But also, Tony, I think again we're putting it in some context. In addition to what you're saying, it underlines other areas. Our democracy. We're a democracy, and it undermines our democracy. It undermines also certain legal obligation of the government. In terms of how monies are accounted for, monies of the state. Because if you are selling passport, that's monies of the state. There are legislations that speaks to how those monies are accounted for. So it's a violation of that. It undermines the rule of law. It's corruption. It's
illegal.
It's illegal democracy. So there's so many aspects to that, in addition to what you just pointed out.
Yeah.
But
Alvin, you know, one more area I have to talk about in all of this windfall is the area where we have young people who we send abroad to study. with a promise that the government will pay for their education. And every semester, these young people are made to feel ashamed and cannot walk with their head held high because the government has not paid the bill that it owes to the university. And you have letters being published all over the place that people know that if you're a Dominican student, you're probably on borrowed time because the government owes the school X amount of dollars that they haven't paid. What are you doing to our young people? And
Well,
then I mean, listen, I came to America in 1990 as a young person to go to school, and you were alone. You know what I mean? You're a young person, you are alone,
absolutely.
and
In a foreign
so
land.
in a foreign land, and so the only security you have is that tomorrow morning you can get up and go to class. The only security you have is next semester you can start class. Because that is the only thing that's
With
literally
the
that is
hope
the
that you'll graduate
only with a degree.
get the
Yeah,
degree that you came here
yeah.
to get. Yeah.
And that is the only hope you have. That's the only thing in front of you.
And
And
when that is
when
taken away from you,
and that is uncertain.
yeah,
What
when
does
that is
that
taken
do
away
to
from you.
you
No,
mentally?
and you're right, and that is the lack of caring for young people, not just those in Dominica, but let's say, for example, those who went to study was a little maybe more fortunate, was able to get through to go and study, you know.
Mhm.
But look at what happened. So whether you're a young person in Dominica or out of Dominica, you still get in the blow, you know.
You've been
No matter,
traumatized.
no matter where you are, you in Dominica, you can get a job. You have to be begging ministers for this, whether you're a young woman, the things you may and may not have to do, or a young man. And then you go to study, and then even while you go and study, you're being, you know, in that predicament. So it is clearly not a good thing. I wanted to point out to you one other thing, Tony, is that,
Mhm.
and look at the library. How long now since we had Hurricane Maria? 6 years, 7 years?
7 years.
You're an engineer. That's your area. That's your area. You are an engineer. You think it will need what, 60, $100 million to fix the Rosa Library that you know very well? How much you think
No,
it
I
would
mean
cost to do to rehabilitate that library?
the library is a small library.
To rehabilitate that library.
I feel and properly equip it and take the opportunity to modernize it. I feel that's something that can be done for less than $5 million.
You see what I'm talking about? And we have only one library in
Library.
the country. One. The main library in the country. In the day of digital technology, and they're talking about green economy and digital economy and all this kind of crap. And we have not found it fit to rehabilitate the library and put it, like you say, put maybe a couple of
Just
computer labs in
modernize
there,
it. I mean, 5 million
modernize
will give
it,
you
you know,
a state of the art library.
and it's going to cost at least 5 or 10 million. Peanuts.
Well,
Peanuts.
peanuts.
Peanuts, Tony. So do you show an interest in young people? I, as a young man growing up in Dominica, used the library when I was going to school to study. Would go. I had a card where I used to go and borrow and get books and all of that. Where
But
you are, Tony, right now in New York, how many public libraries we have? I
I
got
was just
tons
going to
of
say
them here
that
in Atlanta.
I was just going to say I live in Brooklyn, and in Brooklyn
Alone,
I can walk to maybe
there must be at least 10 or more.
from my home. I can easily walk to about 3 libraries. If I decide to take the bus, then the world is the limit. Well equipped libraries where you
Library,
can go to study. You know, you have space where if you are a small business, you can do a presentation with your clients. You can
research,
you get
the whole
research.
work,
You get audio books. You get
the
if
whole
you go
works.
there, do your homework, everything. And I'm saying that for $5 million, you can get a state of the art library in Roseau, and maybe
And
even
look at how we have the state of the library.
a satellite one in Portsmouth and Marigot and Lapland or Castlebrooks.
Uh,
But again, Alvin, as we wind up, it shows a lack of caring for the country and for the people of the country. That it's one thing that people used to say we're a small country with limited resources, but if I could, this is what I would do. The point is that this is the first time in the history of the country that we can, or we should be able to, because it's as if you used to hear about oil. A country or a state catch oil. They went exploring and they found out that they have oil. And you expect to see that largesse and people start to leave and the economy start to flow and people benefit from that. Dominica got a windfall. This government displayed very great creativity to take the CBI program from where it was under the Freedom Party, started by Miss Charles and nurtured by United Workers' Party. They applied creativity and expanded it. Yes, they could have done better due diligence, be more selective, but you have to give them credit for expanding it to a world class, to a world level program. However, Dominica has not benefited from that revenue. There's nothing that you can point to in Dominica that says it's benefit. You might talk about hotels. Those hotels from all reports are
I
owned
just
by
give you the
foreigners.
GDP earlier. I
Yeah,
told you what the GDP is.
exactly. You
The
see,
percentage of GDP.
they build roads. The roads
2%.
are worse than the roads that were there because you get rain and the roads get washed away. You see our schools. The State College was destroyed by a hurricane 7 years ago, and it still hasn't been replaced. You talk about the hospital. When rain falls, you see videos of the hospitals leaking. You see a video where they have one room, the shower and the toilet in the same room.
Yeah.
Nothing points to
The State
a
College, the Dominica State College,
yes,
still in a state of
in a
disrepair.
state repair. Nothing points to a country that had a windfall of funds. That if you have a government that cares just 10% about its people, that they would invest a little bit of money to try to ease the lives of people. Instead, what we have is the running away of Rush University, the closing away of this business, the total dismantling of all the institutions in the country, making it so that everybody has to depend on the government so that the government can control early lives of Dominicans.
And get the young people drunk.
And get the young people drunk.
The CEO drunk. Get the young men and the women drunk on weekends. Consume alcohol.
When I was raising my kids, Alvin, my children in the summer used to go to Old Mill, and they used to learn to carve, and they used to learn to draw. You know, you had creative dance. You had so many troops and groups that used to put on plays and all of those things and develop that side of our society where you have that intellectual fine arts and so on. That contributes towards a community that's more a thinking community, not just a feeling, a hard bass in your chest, boom, 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 with alcohol that makes you behave out of character.
Destroying the young people liver and their kidney at an early age.
By the time they get to marriage, and their brain. Yeah.
You know, but you are so right, Tony. And I mean, you mentioned Portsmouth, and as I said, it is my hope. We're just touching the tip of the iceberg, you know, as
tip
far
of
as
the iceberg. Yeah.
We haven't really get into the meat of the matter. For example, I'll tell you, St. Kitts started their program in 1984. They were the first in that program in the region, 1984. That's 39 years now. And Dominica in 1993, 30 years. So St. Kitts was 9 years ahead of us. And the St. Kitts started their program 1 year after their independence. They gained independence in 1983, and 1 year after that, they went into that. And that was because at the time, as you know, sugar started to decline, which was one of the main exports of St. Kitts. St. Kitts was one of the main sugar producing place. And I guess the then Prime Minister, then Kennedy Simmons, started to scratch his head. He became first Prime Minister. England tell him, go on your own, find your home. It's like you throw your child out and say, well, you're 18 years now, find your apartment. You're going on. So Kennedy Simmons said, boy, let me see if I can do this thing. And he went into it. And obviously, the rest is history where we are today. One of the reasons which I think Eugenia implemented it as well back in 1993, she and Kennedy Simmons were very close. They were close in like politicians in the region. And Kennedy must have told her, well, Eugenia, maybe that's something you might want to consider, given after the hurricanes and what have you. And they had their challenges as well. And like you say, the UWP came in, brought it to another level. But this guy just take the thing and corrupted it. But let me just share with you, for example, St. Kitts, like I told you, let's compare. We had that COVID, and you know what COVID did to all the world rather, but in particular, small economies like ours, COVID-19. St. Kitts, some of the main measures they put in place by the Ministry of Finance in 2020. You know what St. Kitts did here? With their CBI money, I would imagine, because that's their main source of revenue. Provision of income support of up to $1,000 a month for affected workers through the Social Security Board. So workers that were affected, they give them $1,000 a month as part of in 2020, the COVID. Injection of 10 million to boost production in agriculture and ensure greater food security. 10 million. Provide additional fund to support the poverty alleviation program. Provide an additional resource to capitalize severance payment fund. So where people will let go, they were severed because of the COVID.
Yeah, business not happening, so you can't keep employees.
They gave 30 million in funding through the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis for mortgage loans to citizens. Okay? Moratorium on payment of mortgages held with the National Housing Corporation and the Development Bank of St. Kitts. So they gave them, they say, we give you a moratorium. You don't have to pay anything, whatever, because of the situation. Moratorium on payment for electricity for April to June 2020 by the St. Kitts Electricity Company. So people, you know, you can't pay your light bill, we'll keep your power on for you, we won't shut it down on you. Postponement of payment of property tax from June to September 2020. Reduction of corporate income tax from 33% to 25% for April to December 2020. And business that retain at least 75% of the employees. Reduction of unincorporated business tax. And they go on and on. All of that they did in 2020. And they have a similar long laundry list again in 2021 that they did for their citizens.
It goes back to caring for your people. That's what I said.
Absolutely, that's what you're saying. Now compare that to Dominica. Let's hear what Dominica did, because it's good to know what Dominica did. Extension of the deadline of filing of personal and corporate income tax return. So they extend your deadline for you, but you still got to pay it. They are waiving nothing. And they're getting all that CBI money. Extension of 3 months for payment of corporate income tax. Again, they're not saying they waive the tax. They just extend it, but it's still due. Waiving penalty for businesses that enter into payment plan within 6 months of the new payment deadline. Okay? Then they go on to say there that they give a reduction of the corporate income tax rate from 25 to 17. Reduction of zero payment on import duty and VAT. Increased budgetary to the Ministry of Health and Agriculture. You see the language? Increased budgetary funding to the Ministry of Health and Agriculture. There's no amount there.
Yeah.
So they didn't say, well, we'll give
it's just smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirror, exactly.
Smoke and mirrors. We don't charge you a fee at the port.
Yeah, what they say
charge
again.
you a fee if you
Cash
do this,
grant,
we don't charge you a fee.
Cash grant to approximately 2,500 individual crop farmers based on the size of the farmer's holding. Again, they don't put a figure there. Cash grant. A cash grant can be anything. It can be from $1 to $1 million, like you tell you.
And if you remember how that was administered, there was a lot of reports that people who were not farmers were getting money and farmers were suffering.
If you blue, you won't get. If you're red, you will get.
Yeah.
Pay to small contractors and merchants with amount owed by the government in excess of $100,000. And you know who those people were, who they give the LP and who they get materials from, who Anthony Hayden would get the materials from to do. You know who gets it. Income supports of heads of family and single persons who are currently unemployed extended to do so very vague. Very vague as compared to St. Kitts, where they were extremely specific in what they did, how much money they gave, what kind of relief they give to their people. So that is where you make the comparison. They both have the program, but look at what one is doing from a caring government to what the other is doing as a non-caring government.
Yeah.
You see? And that is the issue that we have to address. And maybe at another program, we will look at, for example, St. Vincent. St. Vincent does not have a CBI program. They're the only one within the OECS without a CBI program. Okay? And therefore, St. Vincent and the Grenadines are able to maintain and grow the economy as best as they can, to the extent where their GDP per capita is more than Dominica. Let me share with you.
Alvin, before you go on, there's a comment here from Alexandra Thomas that says that it says that your leadership and tutelage is required in Dominica, Alvin. They're looking for you to go back home.
Oh my God, she wants to send me home.
Yep.
She wants to send me home.
It's a good time you say good evening.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you. Let me share with you some very startling statistics as well.
All right, let's do that as the last thing, and then we do closing remarks because we're like an hour.
You want to do it now?
Yeah, go ahead after you do this, and then
let me share with you, because I gave you what the GDP was. Okay, I gave you what the GDP were in certain sectors, and the GDP as it relates to the economy and GDP per capita. Let's look at debt. As an individual, Tony, if you go to the bank to get a loan, the bank is going to look at your income, and they're going to look at all your debt or your expenses. They'll see how much credit cards you have, how much you're paying for lights, how much you're paying for phone, for rent, for mortgage, blah, 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 blah. And there's what is called a debt to income ratio. So if your debt is out there, the bank is not going to lend you. The bank is going to say you are loaded. I mean, I care. How are you going to pay this money back? Okay, so you'll be in debt. Now, within the OECS, they have the debt to GDP ratio should be at a 66% threshold, meaning that it should be no more than 66%. Okay? There is what is called the WTO, the World Trade Organization. They do what is called media reviews with the OECS, and they do that every 6 years. The last one was done in 2014. And because of the COVID, they were not able to do it 6 years out of 2014. So they only did it last year. They were able to undertake it last year. And that document is available. A lot of information in there. We can deal with that. But let's look at the debt to GDP ratio. Antigua, we also have a CBI program. Antigua debt to GDP ratio, meaning that how much debt the country owes. If now Antigua come up for sale, each citizen of Antigua would have to pay so much because the country owes as a whole so much debt, was 84.83%. Okay? For 2022. 84.83%. The average value for Antigua and Barbuda during that period was 94.39. The minimum was 78 in 2019, and the maximum was 131.4 in 2004. Remember, we're looking at 2014, as I said, 21. So they're 84%. I'll take Dominica last. Let me give you the others. Grenada debt to GDP ratio for 2022 is 64.75%. 64.75. This is lower than 71% ratio in 2021. Okay, that's Grenada. St. Lucia debt, public debt to GDP ratio was for 2022 was 85.6%. This was significantly lower than the 83.3% ratio in 2021. So they had 85.6. St. Vincent debt to GDP ratio for 2022 is 87.8% of GDP. Okay, 64.2% of that is external debt. Okay, because you can have external and local debt. They don't have CBI.
Right.
St. Kitts debt, public debt to GDP ratio in 2022 was 61.1%. You hear that number? This was below the ECCU, the Eastern Caribbean Union regional target of 60%. And In 2018, they were 53.9. 2021, they were 69.11. 2020, they were 67.97. 2019, they were 54.29. St. Kitts. Dominica debt to GDP ratio in 2022 is 104.3%.
In other words, the government
after
operating at a
peaking
loss.
in 2021, it was 109.2% debt to GDP ratio. Now, you know, they'll come and tell you, well, we had COVID, St. Kitts had COVID. They'll tell you, well, we had Hurricane Maria. But the point remains, if you are picking up revenue to the amount of $1.2 billion,
more than that,
why
I
would
don't
you
know. I
have
don't know
to
where
go
you
and
get your
borrow?
number. I don't know where you get the number of $1.2 billion.
What?
The EU told us that they sold 34,500 passports.
You know, I'm not good at maths,
The
Tony. I'm not
average,
good at maths. You're an
well,
engineer.
I'm good at math. The average cost of a passport is $100,000. 34,000 by 100,000 is a few billion, not 1.2 billion. It's a few billion, and that's US dollars.
Right.
So we cannot be saying 1.2 billion. It's
So
billions of
therefore,
dollars.
why would you be in that amount of debt? Think of it that way. It's like you, Tony, working. You getting a good salary. Where you work, you getting a 6 figure income as a salary. But yet you in debt.
Well,
Yet you owe in the bank.
let's end where we start. Let us say you, Alvin, you win the lottery.
You see the predicament we're in?
Yeah. No, you win the lottery. You won the lottery, you won a couple $100 million. But at the same time that you win a couple $100 million, you still go by the bank and take $50 million loan. That's what Dominica is in. That is what Dominica is in.
But they end up taking even more than what because why should the country be? Why should Dominica has a public debt to GDP ratio of 104%, 104.3? Why?
The government operating at a loss.
How can they have that amount of debt and St. Kitts, on the other hand, have 66% of GDP? St. Kitts is saying, you know what? Whoever we owe in or out of St. Kitts is only 66 point something percent of our GDP. Dominica, on the other hand, is saying we have 104%, but yet we have that kind of money that we collected from the CBI. If Dominicans are not outraged at that, I don't know what will outrage them.
Yeah. And so Alvin, I think we've laid out the case that in a time of abundance, we don't see the investment in the country. We don't see the development. We don't see any kind of spending the money for the benefit of Dominicans. That is obvious, and that is what it is. That is what Passportgate is about. It's about give us a count for the money, because anyhow you look at it, anyhow you shake it, anyhow you smell it, we don't see where you spend that kind of money. And on top of that, the last thing that you said, not only we don't see the money, we see you go and borrow more.
You owe more now.
Give us an account of where that money went, or tell us that the European Union doesn't know what they're talking about. And you didn't sell no 34,500 passports. You only sold 10,000. And you didn't sell it at 100,000. You only sold it at 25,000. And therefore, all of what they're saying is not true. You're going to show us that the money you use to build the homes that you give to people is not Dominicans' money. So therefore, that's why you're not giving them title to their homes. You're going to show that you don't have the money to repair the tourism sites when tourism comes. So Alvin, I'm going to give you the opportunity to give some closing remarks. Sam, I don't know if we have some more comments that you want to put up really quick before we launch into closing. I saw Didi Easter had a comment talking about the lack of vision. Didi Easter said, given the level of corruption and malgovernance of this regime, we are comparing apples and oranges. When it comes to the revenue generated from CBI circulating in the country, in the economy of the other Caribbean countries, and the misappropriation of funds in Dominica. She's correct. Because on one hand, we're talking about a country where the money makes it to the economy, and therefore comparing them to Dominica, where the money not only didn't make, they take more money, borrowed more money to run the country. So you really, really, you know, we have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
rattle your head to wrap
Yeah,
around
that's
that.
true. I agree for she has a point, but it is important that we make comparisons as
Mhm.
well for the
Well,
simple
well,
reason.
of what it can be, what it could be, what it
Absolutely,
should
and
be.
and
Yeah.
absolutely, and you asked that I end, and let me see as I end, Tony, that I said earlier that our citizenship is enshrined in our constitution. It is outlined in Chapter 7 of the Dominica Constitution, Section 97 all the way to Section 102 speaks of citizenship. Okay, and our constitution, which belongs to we the people. We the people, that's ours. It started off by whereas the people of Dominica. So that's yours. That belongs to you. Okay? And Prime Minister Skerrit is selling citizenship, which is enshrined in our constitution, to foreigners, quote unquote.
Not quote unquote foreigners,
And
period.
therefore that
You know?
should be of concern to us.
Mhm.
But in addition to that, why I also make comparisons is that the passport that you hold entitles you as a Commonwealth citizen. So it is not just a passport for Dominica. That passport you hold in, that Dominican passport you hold in, entitles you to work, travel to St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent, work and live in any one of those OCS countries. To the extent where you can also vote in any one of the the islands once you meet the necessary requirement. All of that enshrined in our constitution. So that is why it's important. It's like in a family. If one member of your family, Tony, has been a rascal and doing things that bring your family to disrepute, you have to call him out. You have to say, well, hey, Tony, what you doing there? You're embarrassing daddy, you're embarrassing mommy, you're embarrassing your brother, your sister. Because it's a family. We're within the OECS. They may not, sometimes in family, they won't behave like families, but it is still a family.
Mm-hmm.
So the point I'm making is that it is important to see what obtains elsewhere. Because when we talk about those issues, we're not talking about it from the point of view of just because we want to talk about it, or we just want to put Skerrit on the blast, or we want to put the government on the blast. It is because we are saying we're operating in the same space. They like to talk about a hurricane and all of this. St. Vincent, do you know when St. Vincent had that eruption a couple years ago? 20,000 citizens got displaced.
Mm-hmm.
20,000 got displaced. The ash covered the entire country.
And that's what it did to the
Affected their
agriculture.
crop, everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay? Antigua and Barbuda had hurricane a couple years ago too. So they like to say, oh, when Maria come, this come, that come. I mean, BS.
And that's all well and good. Just show us the books.
So my closing is that, as I said, it is my hope that we have sort of spur the conversation, the appetite of folks, that they will now want to have a conversation, ask the hard questions, seek clarification, and I would encourage them to read the reports. They are out there online. Those of you who have access to it, it's a lot of reports. It's a lot of reports. And I think we have to be thankful for those folks for the depth to which they have gone into that investigative work and brought out what they brought out. I would also want to give credit. I think we need to give some credit to folks like Angelo Allen and Lennox Linton, who has been bringing that to the fore for a number of years as well. But like it always says, Tony, a prophet is never recognized in his own country. That's how it is. Sometimes we hear it from our people, but we don't believe. But if we hear it from outside, we believe. But that being said, I think we should be grateful that these investigative reporters have made that available to us. Because on the question of access to information, that's another issue again that we can spend a whole night to discuss. Only 4 of the islands in the region, 4, Jamaica, I feel in Trinidad, I think the Bahamas, have what you call Freedom of Information Act, where the government is obligated to make information, public information available. Nowhere else have that. No freedom of information. So that's why you find those kind of investigative work can be a challenge, both in terms of access to information as well as funding to be able to support that kind of investigative work. So thanks again, Tony, for having me on. I hope I was able to stimulate the conversation, and let's continue. There must be consistency on that. We can't just do one and stop. We have to take it at the various levels and help the people get some clarity on what all of this entails.
No, certainly, Alvin. And the whole idea is Passportgate is going to continue until we have a resolution. Either there's accountability or somebody is held to account, held to account. And so I want to thank you for coming on. And what I would say is that the idea of Passportgate is not to convince anybody about that the government is bad or whatever. If all of what you've seen in the last 20 years or the last 10 years hasn't convinced you that the current administration doesn't have the best interests of Dominica at heart, if it hasn't convinced you that there needs to be a change in leadership in Dominica, I'm not interested in investing any time or energy in convincing you. So this is not to convince a labor right that they should do this or do that or the other. This is for the folks who are already aware of what is wrong, and to just let them see how bad it is. You know, it's like you know there's something wrong with your foot, but when you go by the doctor and they take the X-ray, you really see that tumor in your leg, and you're like, oh my God, they're gonna cut my leg. To point that out. It's not to bring anybody along, because we don't need everybody. There's enough folks who understand that if we can bring them together, that there's enough of us that can create that movement to hold that government accountable. And that is what we're after. And so I thank you for that, because you were able to bring a lot of clarity to a lot of issues, and to really make people understand that now is the time to act. There's not tomorrow, there's not next week. Now is the time that we have to act and to stay with this one, because we've been given a message. I know you spoke about Lennox and Angelo, but they could easily be accused of having an axe to grind because they're Dominican. But these are folks who are international. They don't care whether what Dominica does has no impact on them. So it gives it an objectivity that is difficult, difficult to get away from. And so it's a gift in that sense. And so we have to make use of that opportunity. I want, you want to say something real quick?
Go ahead. No, as you talk about gift, and I'm glad you end on that, you kind of come to that note. It would be remiss of me as well if on the eve of our independence, today's the 1st of November, 2 days from today would be, I don't know if you want to use the word celebrate or observe. I don't know which is the right one. We'll be either celebrating or observing 45 years of independence as a nation. Okay? And like you say, I think this report is a gift to us. A gift in the sense for us to ask ourselves the question, where have we been as a nation after 45 years of independence? That we have moved out of the colonial chains and said we are adult and mature and can govern ourselves. And 45 years later, we find ourselves in the clutches of Chinese and Anthony Hayden and foreigners who are colonizing us and colonizing our loot as pirates. So I think it's an opportune time as we reflect on that 45th year of independence to each of us ask ourselves a question. Where would I like to see Dominica 5 years down the road, which would put us at our 50th anniversary, half a century as a nation? So I think the work starts now. It should have started several years ago, but let's start now and commit ourselves for the next 5 years as we roll into our 50th year as a nation, that when we get to that mark, we can say, well, hey, we have arrived. Things are different. We'll see a difference. 5 years from now, we can see development. We'll see the kind of development in not just infrastructure development, but people development. So I think that's the gift I would want to suggest
A
and give to the
45th
people of Dominica
45th
as the
anniversary gift.
45th anniversary of independence.
Certainly, and that is a good point. Because yeah, I was about to wish Dominicans, congratulations on attaining 45 years of independence, and to really take stock and assess: are we proud of where we are as a nation? Are we proud when we see that video of where we are bringing our guests to see what? I don't know, because what we see is a broken down bridge and some ramshackle buildings. Is that something that we can proudly go to work, as you said, tomorrow and show somebody a video and say, look at Dominica, what we are doing with the gift of Dominica? There's something that I said before. Does Dominica deserve Dominicans? Or do Dominicans deserve Dominica? That's a question I want everybody to ponder on as we observe 45 years of independence. With all of the gifts and all of the attributes that Dominica has that make it a special place, do you feel that Dominicans deserve that? And do you think that Dominica deserves Dominicans? Honorable Hector John, former representative of Salisbury, saying
My
good night,
friend,
good night to you.
good night.
You know, you're not proud of where we are. There's a
Many of
lot
us
to be
share
not
that
proud
sentiment.
about. Yeah, we once used to walk proud and say we are Dominicans. Now we have to take it with a grain of salt. But if we look forward and we set our aspirations on making sure that at 50 we are proud, then we can start to square our shoulders, raise our chin, stick out our chest, and say, yeah, we got a little sidetracked, but we are on track. And that's what we need to do.
Work with that in mind.
That's what we need to do. And so tonight, folks, we looked at the different aspects of the economy: tourism, agriculture, our education, our healthcare system, our investment in our young people, our investment in our older folks, and all the infrastructure in the country. Look at all of those 5 areas and set in your mind, 5 years from now, we are all going to go home for one big 50th anniversary celebration. What would we like to see? You're going to bring your co-worker with you, your neighbor with you, somebody that you care about their opinion. You're going to bring them to Dominica with you. What would you like to see? What would you not like to see? Are you proud of the person that you have as the head of your country? What about him exactly you're proud of? What exactly has Labour Party government done in Dominica that you can hold up and say, look at what my government did that makes me proud? And if you cannot point to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things after 23 years, you definitely need to look at a change. For sure, you need to look at a change. And so that is what this is. This is Passportgate. This is pointing out to you that there's a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of unaccounted money. There's a lot of Dominicans who are suffering and dying because the money that belongs to them, that would provide the health care, that would provide the better roads, that would provide the better education, that would keep our young people occupied so they don't get so enamored with guns and violence. All of that money that would have gone into that and saved the lives of our fellow Dominicans and give them a better thing on their health. Where is that money? We deserve to know where that money is. We cannot let Passportgate go without a resolution. And that is what we're looking at. We are going to stay on this topic until we get an answer. What happened to the money? 34,500 passports sold, average of $100,000, equals to a good chunk, maybe 12 billion EC dollars. We put our imagination and said what we would do with 100 million. Alvin pointed out what 3 million would do to our micro businesses. What we would do with our library with $5 million. What we would invest in our young people with $10 million. What we would do at our state college. Where are the billions that belong to our people? We need answers, and we're not going to relent. We're not going to rest until we have those answers. So I want to say good night to you folks. Thank you so much for staying with us. We have gone for almost 2 hours, but it's good information. Alvin, I want to thank you so much for indulging us and staying with us and coming so well prepared and really clarifying a lot of the stuff, bringing it in perspective, putting in comparisons in front of people. So thank you very much for that. Folks, we will do this again next week, Wednesday, this week in interview. But in the meantime, think of Passportgate and what is the result that we would like to have. Happy 45th anniversary to you, Dominicans. St. Vincent also celebrated their Independence Day a couple of days ago. So happy independence to you as well. I have a few people from St. Vincent in the audience. So good night, folks, and we will see you again next week, Wednesday. Have a good rest of the week and a great weekend. See you next week, Wednesday. Keep Passportgate on your mind. Let's demand accountability. Let's stop the abuse of our people. Stop the disrespect of our people. Stop your self-disrespect if you find yourself still supporting this regime that has nothing to show in terms of results that mean anything to the quality of life of Dominicans. Thank you to my team, Sam and Ella, for helping me put this program together. Thank you to our artists who produce the flyer. And folks, let's just do what we have to do. Let us resolve that we are going to stand up for Dominica. Good night, everyone.